So what is sort of the bad stuff we want to find? Well, it's this TLS config. So we can just sort of copy this code in directly. This is sort of a nice place to start sometimes. I'll be like, okay, this is the code that I'm looking for, and then I sort of gradually abstract it away. Okay, but there's a lot of this that we don't care about. So we probably don't care about this keylogger writer. So maybe we just, say like whatever can happen here. This min version is, something that we care about. So that's probably bad. Let's see, this other stuff is okay. So let's just add an ellipsis operator there. Oh man, this is not clear. There we go. So basically we're saying this is creating a TLS config object that is setting this min version to SSLv3, which is bad. And there could be some stuff before or after, we don't care. So the ellipsis operator is 0 or more arguments, but it can also apply to statements or to like attributes in a struct. So this other example that we wanted to find is where this insecure skip verify is set to true. So it's actually pretty simple. We can just add another or is clause and say this time insecure skip verify, when that's equal to true, we do not properly vet the certificate of the server. So basically we're just codifying like this is a bad pattern, this is a bad pattern, and so forth. So conceptually you could say like for this, whenever our developers create this type of object, these are the settings that either should always be set or these are the settings that should never be set. And Semgrep is sort of a nice, easy way to do that. So basically, we took one of these cases, right? This is the part of it that's bad. So let's add a case for that. Then this insecure skip verify is another bad thing. So then we just added a series of cases. And then bam, that is all. Any questions about this one? Yeah, probably. I agree. Kevin says that probably should be TLSV 1.1 or greater, maybe even like 1.2 or 1.3. Yep. Yeah, this is just an example. Whatever your policy is, we could probably, probably like a better way is if we were to sort of enumerate what are the sort of versions of TLS we allow, and then, and then just like enumerate those. All right, thanks, Timo. Thanks for joining. Okay, so Andre says, make it more if it's not, check out ng-lint. TS-lint support is discontinued and we're deprecating its support in Angular. Sorry, Andre, I'm not exactly sure what your question is.
I mean, it was more a note for you to watch later. I think I distracted you there. It is about the discontinuing that we're actually doing on the latest version of Angular. And somebody can actually write, it wouldn't be me, mate, but somebody can actually write a linter based on what you just showed me that can, fill up the gap coming on Google. And you have a very large community behind it. Like from what you showed me and the speed that he has, you would be performant enough to actually do that job.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. So the point is TS-lint is being discontinued, and we're deprecating its support in Angular CLI. I think basically the idea is there are many linting tools, and for some of those, like could we just have Semgrep be like a meta linter that supports all of these, or in part replaces the functionality of some of these? And the answer is yes. I think that is sort of where we want to go. While we are currently focusing on security, ideally we just want to build a better, easier lint that developers can use. And we have seen some developers at companies be pretty excited about it, because like, oh, this is like way easier than writing like a custom tree visitor pattern, which you often have to do in ESLint and other tools. It can't currently do everything that existing linters can do, because like some of them operate on like code formatting or like comments or like stylistic things, which Semgrep could do. It's just like not a focus currently. But a lot of the checks that linters have, I think we could replicate in Semgrep. So yeah, that's a good point. So Petra asked, how would we run this on our whole source code, like GitHub Actions? Yep, so we're actually going to do that in a little bit. We will see how basically whatever CI system you use, whether that's GitLab runners or GitHub Actions or Travis CI or Circle CI or whatever, because Semgrep is just like a command line tool or a Docker image you can run, and you can pass it a --JSON to have like a JSON output. So it's actually pretty easy to put into whatever CI you use. Yeah, so we'll actually look at that in a second. Okay, so let's look at another example. Yeah, no problem. Thanks for the question. Okay, so there's another cool thing that you can do with meta variables and ellipsis operator, and you can use it to sort of model how code flows through a function. So for example, this is a Flask example. So here we can say we are defining a route, and then here this file name argument that's passed in is first printed to the screen, but then we are basically sending the file back. So the user is providing us a file name, and we're just like arbitrarily sending them something from our file system back. So this is potentially a problem, right? Because if someone says, Etsy password or something, we could be stealing files from the server. So how would we do this? We could say like, all right, let's just copy this code up into the pattern, and we perhaps don't care about what this argument is, so we can just say ... We don't know what the route's name, like what that function name is going to be, so we could just do that. This argument might not be file name, it could be anything, so we're going to change that to a meta variable as well. This print statement doesn't really matter, so let's just delete it. But there could be one or more statements in the route before the send file call happens. This comment doesn't matter. And then again, it's not necessarily file name, it's whatever arg is. And this is sort of a subtle thing, but in Python, we actually do sort of like name resolution. So you actually have to do, I think, flask.sendFile here, not just sendFile, because that's its absolute path. The behavior of this is actually a little bit different based on language, so you might need to play with it a little bit. But do this, we can see that we flag this. So if you think about it, we're basically telling Semgrep sort of conceptually how you would describe the security issue to like a friend of yours. You're like, well, there's like some route, and then the user provides some argument, and then some stuff happens, and then eventually that argument is passed to the send file function. So let's look at these other test cases. Here, send file is like a hard-coded string, so like that's probably safe. Here, it's like, well, okay, we're still like using some variable, and it's not something the user controls, so that's probably safe. But here, there is a base path, but we are actually using the user input a little bit. So the attacker could do some sort of like path traversal where they do .. / blah 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 all the way to something bad. So this probably is a case that we care about, that we're currently missing. So I'm going to teach you an additional sort of Semgrep syntax called deep expression matching, and basically it looks like this, where you do less than sign .. and then some meta variable, and then .. greater than sign. And basically what this means is here there is some expression. I don't necessarily know what it is, but somewhere in that expression is this meta variable. So here we can see that the variable, or the attacker input, is sort of appended here at the end. It's not just like the only argument like in this first simple example. So if we run this, we can see that we flag both of these now. So again, this argument is somewhere in this expression. There could be other stuff. It could be maybe like a function call or just other complicated expression, but we're still going to match. So this is nice for like not having to care about like all the different edge cases. But again, I think there was a question earlier about performance. So deep expression matching, because it is sort of like a more complex analysis, if you do a ton of deep expression matching in like one pattern, this could make the rule a little bit slower. Like still, it's going to be fast-ish, but it's not going to be like blazing fast like some other things.
As far as the structure of the rule, right now it's matching only when that's on the return line. How would you generify it? So it could be returned to a variable and assigned, and then.
Yeah, so if this was like assigned to some variable, and then let me create another example that I think is representative of what you are asking about. So something like this, an example maybe, where it's like they're doing like some other stuff with it.
Oh no, I was just thinking of what if send file was invoked not on the return line but before that, and the result of that was like to a variable with a rule break, the way it's written.
Yeah, it's that's a good question. Let's just say like that, and then something like this maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it probably won't match. Yep. So I think in general, like this is like you're returning like a server response. So I think generally you would have like probably a return here, because I think setting it to a variable, I don't know if that makes sense semantically, but I think in general your question is appropriate. But yeah, so we can remove the return to make it a little bit more generic. So that's still going to find this, even though it's not just strictly a return. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, perfect. Thanks.
Cool. Yeah, it's a very good question. Yeah, so it can be a bit finicky catching all the different cases, but we tend to try to take a data-driven approach where we see like, oh, what are the various bugs that have happened historically? What sort of feedback are we getting from like security tools, bug bounty, pen testing, things like that, and then sort of like codify that domain knowledge as well. Yeah, one thing I don't think I've mentioned yet, but we actually have this internal sort of like MapReduce platform where we can take Semgrep rules and then run them at scale across thousands, tens of thousands of repos from GitHub. And we actually use that for writing rules oftentimes. So we're like, okay, I think this is a good idea, but how does it actually perform in the real world? So then we're like, okay, this seems good. And then, we look at like, 5,000 repos and we're like, okay, well, we found these cases, which are great. We missed these cases, so let's make the rule a little bit better. Or, oh, these are false positives because of this. Let's add some cases to filter out that noise. So I think like being perfect is generally not possible, but we do try to model things based on how issues tend to appear in the real world, not just like conceptually how we think they might happen. But yeah, if you come across any false positives in our default rules, we would love pull requests or just feedback and examples on like, oh, you should have caught this, or like you did catch this and you shouldn't have. Okay, cool. So that was...
Yeah, we have developers I've seen are very creative at making the fast rule happy, but not actually fixing problems.
Yes, that is definitely true. Yeah, ideally we could just make it very easy for them to do the right thing. So then, and ideally we can stop bothering them with things they don't care about, so that they don't feel like they have to do that. Okay, so we just looked at an example of how to sort of track user flow through a function using metavariables. So I have a challenge for you all to do basically the same thing, but for a Express application, Express.js. And so here we have a get route on a specific path where we are taking name from a query parameter, and then we're just returning it directly. And here we are taking email instead of name. Maybe we're doing something in the middle, and then we are including that in the response, but it's not the only thing. So basically, if you leverage what we just learned, it's a very similar process. So feel free to give that a try.